All right, so we're back for another installment of the Warheads Network. We're back with Mr. Silky Smooth Steve Gatewood. And of course, the illustrious Roscoe Brown. I'm Apocalypto Joe. And we're here to talk about something that's plaguing the men of the world, and particularly here in America. And it's the lack of dick control. We know that dick control is very problematic. It's something that both black men, white men, Mexican men suffer from. However, it's more dire in our communities because we don't have the money to fall back on. And so it puts us in a very, very precarious predicament. But I wanted to bring up this book written by Sean Joseph O'Reilly, How to Manage Your Dick. And in the book, it talks about how you can redirect your sexual energy, control your impulses, and discover more spiritually enlightened and involved ways of self-actualization. But before we get started, Roscoe, I wanted to ask you, what's your take on dick control and some of the negative effects of not having one of the most important types of self-control that you could have?
Well, some of the negative effects of having a lack of dick control. Well, we know that the WAP has been mesmerizing guys since the beginning of time. One of the more prominent tales concerning that being the tale of Adam and Eve. You know, if he was able to restrain himself a little bit, who knows what would happen. Another story for another time. But yeah, just guys having a lack of control in this situation has been very bad for, you know, not just on an individual basis, but for our society, for our community as a whole. You know, we've dealt with a lot of things, and we know that women, they use the promise of sex to manipulate and a lot of those things. And we just want men to know that they can get away from those types of things, learn how to manage their urges, and we want to be able to provide maybe some tips to help some of those guys along the way. So yeah, some of the negative things, like I said, are things that we're going to go over as we continue to go through this show. But yeah, just guys need to learn how to manage those urges, and we're going to tell guys how. But Silk, what do you have?
Well, I'll go into it by pointing out that society uses the word dick control in a manner that propagates the problems that we're going to discuss today. Meaning, the urban definition of dick control states that it is a method used by males to prolong an orgasm. Masturbation helps a man from premature ejaculation. A man who can control his mind to come when he wants to have dick control. A man who has excellent dick control can go 50 minutes to an hour before busting the first nut. First of all, that's the problem right there. Because, as we just stated, that's not proper dick control. You know, I would classify that as dick ability. You see what I'm saying? It's more, control is, like you said, control is controlling the urge to use said dick. You know what I'm saying? And not putting yourself in a position where you end up with multiple baby mothers, dealing with the stress of that, dealing with the financial responsibility of multiple children because of your lack of dick control. And, you know, if society is telling you, hey, you're supposed to have dick control in this way as far as to please a woman, without the ramifications of that action leading you to responsibility for life, then there's always going to be that divide. You get what I'm saying? Where intellectual men that say dick control is about the ability to control your urges, and immature, well, I won't say immature because they're being taught this by the internet. I'll just say the internet kids or the young adults are being told that dick control is a feat that you should strive to, as far as being sexual with a female. Again, without even bringing forth the thought of having a child and the consequences of those actions. What you think, Pop?
Well, one of the things I wanted to emphasize is that, we have more than just a pandemic of COVID and things like that out here. There's also a STD pandemic that goes on within our communities because of a lack of dick control. Just a couple of years ago at Coachella, they were having a concert over the weekend. I forget the date, but a whole bunch of people went there, and a whole slew of young men and young women came out with herpes.
I remember that.
You remember that, don't you? Mm-hmm. And why is that? It's because of a lack of dick control. So STDs and STIs are at the top of the list for reasons that you should be able to control your dick. I know a lot of times people say use a condom, but there are actually STDs that'll penetrate a condom, believe it or not. Yes. Also, some of the issues surrounding this, you guys spoke about the loss of money. When you don't have money, it's hard for you to build. It's hard for you to buy homes. It's hard to generate generational wealth for your children. Also, the stress that Silk talked about from dealing with multiple women, because they want attention, they need for their child, for themselves, you name it. But also, I was looking up some information about how children become underdeveloped when they don't have both parents in the picture full time. And so when you have underdeveloped children, that's when you start to see the overly emotional male, the masculine female. It's because you have a power shift within the home structure that's missing, that a mother and a father kind of balances out. So when a father's attention is diverted between multiple households, this is what you get. You get a breakdown of the family. And so I ran across some information that me and Roscoe want to share about what's required to build these healthy children. And the first one is resilience. This is what a father and a mother can instill into their children. And I'll go over the points, and Roscoe, you can go over your points as well. But it brings out how resilience has been known to be essential for great learning, and everyone needs some level of resilience to get through hard times. When parents nurture their children, such key traits in a child, it helps the child think more flexibly and realistically, be more creative, and avoid depression or anxiety. Many parents often try to shield their children from painful situations, but teaching them resilience enables them to give things a try. For instance, if they are having a problem in school with other kids, to try problem solving with those other children and learn how to manage the problems instead of just running away from it. Through this, children will look at a wider, more positive picture instead of giving up. And so how many times, I know in my experience, I've actually dealt with women in relationships who weren't resilient. The second things got a little bit shaky and rocky, they were running. I know it's a song now out called Track Star by Mooski. And he's talking about a girl who can't deal with the downside of a relationship. So she kind of just stays while it's in the honeymoon phase. And the second it gets real, she's out. Well, when you have both parents and both parents are healthy, that resilience kicks in and you're able to problem solve and build healthier homes. What do you got, Roscoe?
Well, for me, I got point number 2, which would be trust. And in that it states that imparting trust starts right from the time your infant is born. You can bond with your baby in a way that instills in her a profound sense of security and ultimately in herself. In infancy, That means responding to her basic needs. For instance, feeding a child when they are hungry, changing the diaper when it's needed, singing to her, making eye contact creates a sense of safe feeling. Parents nurture a child's ability to need and to depend, which allows them to grow and develop uh, relationally without fear. So, again, just adding to what Apocalypto said about the need for building strong families, and what the lack of having dick control and the consequences that it breeds. It just breeds the separatist, the separation in family, and we get all these debilitating effects that come from that. So again, this just talks about how the trust, how that trickles down from, it'll come from you to mom, and then mom to kid, and trickle on down from that point. So
Yeah. Another point that we wanted to bring out is dealing with kindness. So once again, you have to be in a situation where you can be kind to the mother. The mother can be kind with the father, and the child is picking up on this kindness. So it brings out, as parents, our job is to nurture and guide a child's natural inclination to pitch in, so it becomes a lifelong habit. It's important to be a good role model so that children learn to be helpful from watching us. When kindness is nurtured, children are able to control their moods, direct their actions, or show empathy and self-mastery. Kindness can be actively fostered and encouraged by parents with thoughtful encouragement and reinforcement. And so if you and the mom are beefing, how can you raise a healthy child? How can you have a child that's kind? We live in a world where people are rude. They're kicking old people. I just saw a video yesterday of a young girl who stole a car from an Uber Eats driver and wrecked it and killed him. There was no kindness there. So we can only imagine what the family structure was. But more than anything, I'm pretty sure there wasn't a healthy father in the picture teaching his daughter the ins and outs of kindness and showing through the example of how he dealt with her mother. But Roscoe, what do you got?
yeah, yeah. No, that was just interesting what you just said. Before I go into my fourth point, yeah, I just thought that was incredibly interesting. It just made me draw back to something else. But I was going to share, but then I thought I might not. I might as well not, because I'm gonna start naming names and stuff like that.
Okay.
But the fourth point being empathy, and empathy is an important factor in educating the child, on what bullying is. The fact that empathy is not something we are born with. It's a skill that can be taught, not only to boost a child's emotional intelligence, but also confidence. For instance, in order for a child to be able to feel and express empathy for another person, their own emotional needs must be met. Hence, parents are responsible for providing emotional support and helping them to cope with negative emotions. Children who are taught to handle these situations with positivity are more likely to have strong emotional empathy. So, with all these points that we're covering, this just shows the importance again of, just having, when you do have a lack of dick control and you're not in tune with the mom, and go ahead and have kids with somebody you're probably not supposed to be having kids with, you're going to end up with the lack of a lot of these things that we're explaining. So to go over just this empathy stuff, when the mom and the dad have a healthy relationship, you're going to build a kid who knows how to cope with situations, who does have empathy for people who are dealing with situations of their own. So It just speaks to healthy relationship build again when you actually do exercise some control and build and wait for the person that you want to build with, rather.
Right, right. And before we pass the baton to Steve, we just want to go over the last point. And that last point is creativity. You probably don't like, what does creativity have to do with dick control? Well, creativity and imagination are critical in nurturing a child through their early childhood development. It is where imagination and thinking out of the box begin in a child and also learning about the world. For instance, nurturing creativity in a child helps them to express themselves verbally and non verbally, plan, act, and interact and react to different things. Furthermore, it fosters their cognitive and social development where they need and when they will need to join the workforce or at the very least start their own business, because you do have to be creative to start your own business. However, interrelationship into in relationships, just as an example, have you ever dated someone who just was boring? They had a lack of creativity. They kind of just sat there and waited for you to bring whatever you would bring to the table. Well, when you're dealing with people who have been nurtured by mom and dad in a very healthy way, you have two people essentially playing a tennis match together. You take a turn, I take a turn, they go back and forth. But when you have this lack of creativity in either the male or the female, they're kind of just sitting around waiting. The cognitive juices never got activated. But these are just some of the points that we want to make on why dick control is so essential to building happy families, healthy communities. But Steve, I know you wanted to make a point.
Well, the point I'm making is just pretty much piggybacking off everything you guys are saying about a happy home or a stable home. I think the most important thing in my opinion is understanding, because understanding is the ability to understand something. It's comprehension, right? And the adverb of it, the action of it is sympathetically aware of other people's feelings, tolerant and forgiving. And
Empathy.
that's something you only get from a two-parent household. To grow up and see your parents concede and compromise, helps build your understanding of, like you said, not being an overly emotional male, not being a masculine female, watching your mom concede and compromise to whatever the father is talking about, and then in turn watching your father concede and compromise to whatever the mom said, shows you that people don't always have to be right. You don't always get your way. You don't end up being a spoiled, overprivileged jerk, that has never had anyone tell them no, and that's another problem with dick control, and the lack of it is because a lot of these guys haven't been told no before. So, they full bore. What do you mean? You can't tell me no. My mom don't even tell me no, because there's never a dad there to reinforce that yang to the yin. And
That
without
sound
a
like
complete circle,
sound like a raper man. That's
you know
what it
what?
sounds like.
A lot of them out here are borderline that, because they don't have men to teach them the social interaction, the proper social interaction with a female. That's how come all of these motherfuckers is coming up now with these women 10, 12 years back talking about, hey, he sexually, inappropriately did this. He did this, and all that. Everything's coming out the woodwork now because a lot of men have never been taught the proper way to court a woman, to woo a woman, to show your interest without being overly sexual with your hands, with the verbiage you use. You know what I'm saying? And that in that mind state leads a lot of people to not have dick control and end up with kids and problems and You STDs, as you said, the lack of restraint, understanding, you give your kids understanding when they can watch that tennis match between parents, to know that sometimes you lose, sometimes you win, but overall it's about the family structure and keeping it some cohesiveness, and I really think that's more, empathy and understanding is really big when you're trying to raise kids, in my opinion.
Yes, and another thing another point I want to make is attachment styles. That's associated with dick control as well. A lot of times when you don't have dick control and you're in and out of the child's life, they do end up with psychological issues. I can go into the technical, psychological, real wordy aspect of it, but think about a little girl. I always think about the movie Heat when Al Pacino had the stepdaughter, Natalie Portman. And the girl tried to kill herself because she was always looking for her real daddy to come through. He never came through. And what the girl ended up doing, slitting her wrist in the tub. But a lot of these young girls, they hit the streets, they hit the pole because they didn't have anybody there. Now, we know that there are some girls with fathers that do all that stuff, but that's rare. For the most part, when daddy is missing and mom is toxic because she never got to have the relationship she wanted with the man who imprinted her, this is what we have. We have a lot of rogue men who are out here wilding out, and a lot of women who just don't respect the hierarchy between child, woman, and man. And so that's all I got, fellas.
Yeah.
I would encourage people to do their own research on a subject like this. Did you guys have anything to add to the story?
No. Me, I think y'all covered it perfectly, actually. I like both of you guys' points about, family and just how a lack of dick control just leads to all these different effects, that the harmful effects towards a family structure, And so, like I said in the beginning about how, we'd have these points that we come up with, and you guys just y'all spoke the gospel, man. Y'all came up with some good stuff, man.
All right. Well, that being said, this is Warheads Network. Like, comment, subscribe, share with people if you think this may be helpful information. Other than that, we up out.